Hey guys, this is Aaron Harrell, and I'm going to show you how to play Lolth's Web. This is one of the games that's used in the casino portion of the adventure in Devious Designs, Menzoberranzan Excursion Act 2. Lolth's Web is played with a standard 52 card deck of poker playing cards. You're also going to need something to keep track of bets. That's why I've got these poker chips here. In order to get the game started, first everybody's going to need to ante in an equal amount of money. Then we're going to randomly determine who's going to be the player who starts each round of this hand of the game. For purposes of this example, I'm just going to have it be the player that's closest to me for the demo. The deck is then shuffled, and one card is placed face up in the center of the play area. This card represents the center of Lolth's Web, and the object of the game is to create a 4-card connection known as a strand to reach the center of Lolth's Web. Each player is then dealt a hand of 4 cards. These cards should be viewed by the player but not shown to anyone else involved in the game. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and just put the cards face up so you can see what would be going on in each of the players' minds as they take their turns. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and mark each of the players so you can know which one I'm referring to. This is going to be player 1, player 2, and player 3. I'm going to go ahead and deal each player a hand of 4 cards. Again, these should be kept secret from the other players, but I'm going to put them face up so you can see what each of the players might be thinking as they're playing the game. Again, the object of the game is to build a strand, that is, a sequence of 4 played cards that stretch from the player to the center of the play area. I'm going to go ahead and move player 2 and player 3's cards just so we can easily see which cards are in their hand and which cards are in play. Now that each player has their initial hand, a round of betting takes place. It's at this point where the players would assess their hands and see if they think it's likely that they'll be able to complete a strand with their existing cards or perhaps with maybe another draw of the cards. Players should be thinking about if they have any cards that can connect to the center of Lolth's Web by matching either the number or face of the card or the suit of the card. So if I'm player 1, for example, I have an ace of diamond, so diamond matches diamond here. If I'm player 2, it looks like I don't have a 6, and I also don't have a diamond. If I'm player 3, I have 2 6s, but no diamonds. Next, players should be thinking about what cards within their hand connect to one another, meaning match, the face or number of the card or the suit. So, for example, over here, player 1, it looks like the 2 aces connect to one another. Player 2, all 3 of these spades connect to one another. Player 3, the jack of clubs and the 6 of clubs connect. The 6 of hearts and the 4 of hearts connect. And the 6 of hearts and the 6 of clubs connect. So as you can see, looking at this, it looks like the third player probably has the strongest hand. Not only can they build a connection at some point down the line to the final card, but they also have multiple connections within their hand. Player 1 is going to open the round of betting, and every round is going to be opened by player 1 this game. This is poker style betting, so here we go. Looking at the hand, player 1 decides to go ahead and check, meaning pass the bet. Player 2, looking at the hand, likewise checks and passes the bet. Player 3 likes that hand, so player 3 is actually going to raise the bet. To end, that means the other players are either going to have to match that or fold and be out what they had anteed. So coming to player 1 is not yet ready to give up, so player 1 is going to call that. Player 2 is also going to stay in the hand, and player 2 is going to call that. So in order to end that round of play, basically all raises have to be met. If there was a raise here, there could also be a raise here. So let's say, player 3 raised 2. Player 1 could see that 2 and raise 2 more, meaning it would be 4 to player 2 to call to stay in the game. Then from there, player 3 would have to put in 2 more because they had contributed. They had raised 2, but they had been re-raised by 2 for a total of 4. 4 to call, and then 2 on top of the original 2 to stay in the hand at that point. Now that the round of betting has concluded, we'll actually go to a round of play. So in a round of play, each player can either play 2 cards from their hand face up or draw 2 cards from the deck. So looking at this, I don't think anybody has what is needed right now to completely make a strand. So why would a player play anything at this point? Well, they might want to bluff the other players into thinking that they have what it takes to complete the game within just 2 rounds of play. So player 1, looking at his hand, knows that he's in a pretty strong position. When you're player 1, you get to go first, and that's actually an advantage because the object of the game is to be the first one to connect to the center. So he's going to go ahead and draw 2 cards. Here we go. Right, he can't play anything since he chose to draw. That's going to pass to player 2 now at this point. Player 2 can either play 2 cards or draw 2 cards. Player 2 is likewise going to draw 2 cards. Player 3, looking at his hand, he's pretty close to where he needs to be. He needs a couple of cards, though. Now that each player has 2 more cards, let's kind of pause and reassess where they are. Player 1 has significantly improved player 1's position because now player 1 can, within 2 rounds of play, connect to the center of Lolth's web. And so here's how that would be done. On the next turn, player 1 would need to go 5, then ace, and on the following round, player 1 would go ace, and then ace. And the final card, the 4th card played, matches the 3rd card in that they're both aces, and it matches the center of Lolth's web in that they're both diamonds. So player 1 is in a pretty good spot at this point. Let's look at player 2's hand, see if player 2 can end this. Player 2 is not in a good spot because player 2 still has no cards that connect to the center of Lolth's web. We have no 6s and no diamonds over here for player 2. Player 3 now has a hand that can connect to the center of Lolth's web in 2 rounds of play. In order to do that, player 3 would need to go 10, then jack, these match by suit, then the next jack, and then the 6 of clubs. So, again, just as a reminder, that final card played has to match both the 3rd card in some way, in this case they match suit, and the center of Lolth's web in some way, in this case they're both 6s. Player 3 is feeling pretty good at this point, because within 2 rounds of play, player 3 will now be able to connect to the center of Lolth's web. However, player 3 still is at a disadvantage in that player 1 is going to get to go first. So if player 1 is able to connect first, then player 3 will ultimately be the loser, assuming player 1 doesn't end up folding before play is completed. So now that everybody has drawn their 2 cards for this round, another round of betting takes place. Player 1 is feeling pretty good. Player 1 is in the first position and also has the means to connect to the center of Lolth's web. Player 1 is going to go ahead and bet, we'll say, 2 chips. Player 2 at this point sees that there's not much hope, so player 2 is going to fold. Player 2 then is going to lose those 3 chips that are in so far to whomever the ultimate victor is, but player 2 is not going to be out anymore with a losing hand. Player 3, looking at this, is going to go ahead and still stay in the hand, so player 3 is going to call. Since the round of betting has concluded, a round of play begins. Player 1 is going to start by playing 2 cards. Remember, it's always play 2 cards or draw 2 cards. These stretch from player 1 toward the center of the table. Player 2 is out. Player 3 is also going to play 2 cards. These are the hand cards for player 3 over here. This concludes this round of play. At this point, both players 1 and 3 have played 2 cards stretching toward the center of Lolth's web. Again, a round of betting continues. So, player 1's pretty happy. Player 1 knows he can put it away at this point. He's going to go ahead and bet. I mean, he's really confident, so he's going to bet it all. All 10. are now in the pot for player 1. Player 3 sees this. Player 3 has to make a decision at this point. Does player 3 want to go ahead and call to stay in the game? If player 3 were to do that, then after player 1 plays 2 cards to connect to the center of Lolth's web, then that means player 3 is going to lose at that point. Player 3, at this point, sensing strength from player 1, is going to go ahead and fold, because player 3 knows that if player 1 plays those 2 cards first, and player 1 will be going first, then that means that player 3 is going to be the loser. So not wanting to lose the rest of player 3's chips, player 3 is going to go ahead and fold. If player 3 stayed in the game at that point, that would require player 3 to ante all remaining chips, and then after player 1 played 2 cards, that would end the game, because player 1 would have a connection all the way to the center of Lolth's web. So you can see a couple of things from here. One is that going in the first position is an advantage, and that's why that's something that is determined randomly after all players have anteed in. Another thing to keep in mind is that bluffing can be a part of this game. It is possible for a player's first 4 off-the-deck cards, their opening hand, to be able to connect to the center of Lolth's web. So if a player were to play 2 cards in the opening hand, in the opening round of play, then that could indicate that that player is about to finish off the game just within 2 rounds of play. Or it could be a bluff. You know, bluffing is definitely within the character of this game, and within the character of the drow, the civilization of Menzoberranzan being the one for which this game was designed. A variant of Lolth's web, if you want to mix it up a little bit more, would be, instead of having the person who's determined as the first player for each round be the same from round to round, you can roll randomly for each round of play to determine who is going to start that round. So, for example, if it were determined that first player were the one to start the opening round of play, then we have the opening round of play where they all drew 2 cards, then a round of betting took place, then you would roll again to determine who was the start of the next round of play. So in that case, that makes it a little bit more wild, a little bit more chaotic. That first player advantage in that situation is less predictable. There you have it, folks. That's Lolth's Web, a card game built for Tymura's Folly, a casino in Menzoberranzan that appears in Devious Designs, Menzoberranzan Excursion Act 2. I hope you check it out at the DM's Guild. Thanks.